Hi, welcome to the Pearls and Polish podcast, episode 56. I'm your host, Rachael, coming to you from just outside Sacramento, California. With me is the chaotic co-host, Sabine, my 9-month-old schnoodle puppy. She's laying right next to me, chewing on one of her toys, so hopefully she'll be kind of quiet. She tends to be very Velcro with me, like she likes to be around where I am around. So hopefully she's tired enough where she'll just kind of sit quietly. But if not, you'll see her wandering around. If you are a new viewer, welcome. I'm so excited you found our channel. If you're a returning viewer, welcome back. This is my corner of the internet where I talk about knitting, crochet, what we're up to, books we're reading, shows we're watching, and just life in general. Any of the makers and dyers and designers are going to be linked down below in the description, so make sure you check those out so you can get links to patterns or the yarn dyers that I mentioned in today's episode. So it's been about 2 weeks since our last episode, so I have some things to show you, a couple finished objects, but also some things that are still in progress, so a little mix of both. So let's get started with finished objects. First off are my Louise lace mitts. This is a pattern by Raimo. I believe that's how you pronounce it. But anyways, these are lace mittens. This is yarn that my mom brought me back from, I believe, Ireland. And it's a non-superwash yarn that's a tweed. And I really enjoy working with this. When I say non-superwash, I mean it has been not treated to felt. So if I were to put this wet in like the washing machine and then put it in the dryer, it's going to felt and it's going to shrink, which is not great if something accidentally gets in the dryer. But for something like mittens or hats or scarves, something that you want to keep really warm, this is a great choice for that because the yarn is going to hold on to all that hot air. Now, I usually run pretty cold, even here in Sacramento. It gets to be like 60s, 50s degrees in the winter. We have rain, no snow in my part of the state, but I get really cold. So having mittens in my jacket is perfect, especially since I'm now back at working at a school. So I'm going to be outside. I need to keep my hands warm. So those are done. I still need to sew in my ends and block them, but I was very excited with how this turned out. Next are my socks for the Falling Leaves Knit Along, hosted by Earth Tones Girl. So for that knit along, it had to be anything fall related. So it could be fall yarn, anything like that, and you had to knit socks. So this is my second pair. And this is Murray Wool Company, Wool and Goods, something like that. They're linked down below. But this colorway is called Apple Picking, and I love how they turned out. So it came with the mini, which is that green, and these are tweed. And I wanted to do just a plain vanilla sock because the yarn is dyed to have that striping naturally occurring. So I didn't want to mess with the stripes with any sort of pattern. And I think this was a great choice, especially with the tweed, adds that nice texture to the yarn. Really love how these turned out. I have never heard of this yarn company before until this yarn was up as an auction item for Gary Knits, Gary Rides, D-Stash for Good. I was going to say auction for good. It's not auction for good. D-Stash for Good. So I bid on this item and won. And so I've been holding on to it for a bit and I didn't know when I wanted to knit up these socks. But when Denise of Earth Tones Girl announced her Falling Leaves sock knit along, I knew this would be the perfect choice. So I'm so excited with how this turned out. I know I've talked about D-Stash for Good before here on the channel, but if you're not aware of what it is, Gary is in Southern California, so a little farther down the state than where I'm at, but he was a cyclist for Life Cycle for quite a few years and would raise money by having these de-stash auctions. So people would donate money or contribute yarn for this like live auction, and it would go towards supporting him in his cycling ride. It was like, I think San Francisco to LA, something ridiculously long. But it was to raise awareness and funds for AIDS research and treatment. So I've donated a couple times for that, and I've won a couple times for that. So very excited to finally finish one of my D-Stash for Good wins and have those socks done. And last on my finish objects are my Calcifer socks. So here's one of them. Here's the other one. I haven't blocked these yet, but I did want to get this on the blocker so you could see that. This is yarn by Amiee. They're based out of France, and they had like a Miyazaki collection. So I've done a couple of theirs before, but this one is Calcifer, based off of the movie Howl's Moving Castle, which is one of my favorite movies. When this yarn came out a couple years ago, I fell in love with it, had to have it, and never got around to knitting it. So I had it sent out to be cranked out into a sock tube, which is basically a very long tube at 64 stitches. And you go in and add your heels, toes, and cuffs. So that is what I did. I am planning on writing the pattern on how I do this. Ooh, let me cover my face. So that you too can do heels, toes, and cuffs on a tube sock. But for this, I did 30 rounds of 2x2 rib for the cuff. I normally do 20, but for some reason I felt like doing 30. So I did an afterthought heel and then just a regular toe. So pretty simple, vanilla socks. They do need to be blocked so that everything kind of rearranges itself, but really happy with how those turned out. Took me maybe 2-3 days to get those done because the majority of the work was already done, which was nice. So next up are my works in progress. I keep wanting to say finished objects. We already did that. My works in progress. I've got 2. I've been trying to focus a lot on the sweater that I'm going to show you in a second, but I did want to show you these first. This is another of the Louise lace mittens, and this is actually a set for my mom. So like I said, she brought me this yarn back as a gift. I wanted to make her some mittens as well. So this is a great pattern. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the pattern, in that if you've never done cables before, they are very easy to do. The only like cabling, it's not even real cables because you're not rearranging stitches or using a cable needle. You're doing a series of knit 2 together or slip knit and yarn overs to make this kind of cabled pattern. And then you're doing like a slip stitch for this little kind of cable here. So very beginner friendly. The pattern is written beautifully. It comes in 3 sizes. So for mine, I did the smallest size because I have these teeny petite hands, but with really long piano fingers. And then my mom, I'm doing hers a larger size up than mine, and they still look beautiful. So great pattern to get a hold of if you want a quick pattern that's going to look beautiful, but also look really intricate. So make sure you check out her pattern. I have the link for Ravelry down below. These yesterday, so I was actually able to get a lot done because it was Saturday. So I just cast off right before I started recording, and I just have the thumb to do. And then that's done. I'll probably start the second sock today. Second sock. I'm so in sock mode. I'll start the second mitten today, and those should be done by the end of the week. So those are kind of my at-home during the day project. And then my evening project, where I've been spending the majority of my time, has actually been my Zweig sweater. So I know I showed this before in various stages. I showed it to you after it had been hibernating for 2 years. And then, I don't remember if I mentioned this in the last episode. I think I did. I ended up taking the whole thing apart. I used the wrong needles. I used the wrong size. I used a different knitting like technique. I was knitting with my right hand instead of my left. And so there were just too many things for me not to take it apart and start over. So I started over, I went up a size, I picked the correct needles, I stuck with one mode of knitting, and so I was down to starting the body, and this pattern is written that it has a little like cabled X's all over the body, and I started doing that and realized two things. One, I hated doing these little X's because it wasn't enough stitches where you needed a cabling needle or where you needed to rearrange them. It was just super time consuming. I found a video on YouTube of how to do it without rearranging your stitches, but it didn't look as neat, and I just didn't like it in general. I didn't like how it looked. I didn't like doing it, and so I ripped it all back. I probably had a good 2 or 3 days of work done, and I ripped it all back and started again with what I had originally done when I started this sweater 2 years ago, which was just knit stockinette. So that's what I'm doing, and I am so much happier. In that, let me back up a little bit. The focus would be only on the color work and the lace of the top in the yoke, and there wouldn't be any focus on the body. No. Sabine wants to go outside, but she's stuck in here with me because as soon as I let her out, she's going to want to come back in. So anyways, I am at about 7.5 inches from here, the sleeve. So I need to try it on. The pattern calls for the body to be 13.5 inches before starting the bottom cuff. And so I like to try on my sweaters before I get to that like suggested size because everyone's body is different. If the designer has a very short torso, then that's going to reflect in their pattern. If the designer has a very long torso, then that's going to reflect in their pattern. So I like to try it on a couple inches before the suggested kind of length, just so I see what does it look like on my body with the pants that I'm going to wear with this sweater. So I have an idea of, okay, what is actually realistic for me and my lifestyle. So I'll probably do that later today to see how it's fitting. I keep going back and forth about whether or not I want to steam it to kind of let all the fibers relax a bit. Because this is yarn that I've already knit with, it is that like, you kind of call it spaghetti. I don't know if you can see that well. That spaghetti yarn, and that it's kind of kinked up because it was already knit with and it just kind of sat in knitted form. So I do want to steam it to kind of let everything relax and have a better idea of how it's going to fit. But yeah, I'm very happy with that. It comes almost to the top of my hip bone. So like I said, I want to see it on first before I continue knitting, because if I have to rip back because it's too long, I'm going to be very upset. And I do want to finish this sweater because I want to wear it this winter. So that is getting the majority of my time. So hopefully this week I'll be able to finish the body and get the sleeves started. Usually this first sleeve takes me a bit longer, and then the second sleeve does not take me as long because I already kind of know what I'm doing. So there is that. All right, what we're reading and watching. I started the series by Cassandra Clare. I think it's the Dark Artifices. It's kind of the series after her Immortal Instruments series. So I finished the first book, Lady Midnight, and I started the second one, Lord of Shadows. Great, like teen novels, definitely not for kids. It does talk about some more adult subjects, but kind of mindless listening, so I don't have to think too hard, which is great. Shows, we've been watching Agatha all along, which is wonderful. I've been really enjoying that. I started WandaVision again. I saw it when it first came out, but now that I'm watching Agatha, I can't remember all of the little details, so I want to go back and watch WandaVision to make sure I don't miss anything important. And then I started Griselda on Netflix. It's a story inspired by the female Colombian drug lord lady. in Miami in like the 70s and 80s. So that has been really interesting. Definitely not for children. Lots of drugs, lots of violence and all that. But it's been really interesting. And then life updates. I've been subbing again, so I am back in the classroom, which has been great. I've been enjoying it. I haven't had like an actual class that I've been in full time. I've done a couple SDC, which is special day class. That's usually for kids with some sort of spectrum autism thing or some cognitive disorders. So I've done a couple of those, and I've done a couple roving. So if a teacher needs to go into a meeting during class time, I would step into the classroom, be there for the hour that the teacher has the meeting, and then come out when the teacher comes back in. So I've done a couple of those, but nothing like full day subbing, which is a little odd. But at the same time, I'm subbing for only one school, so I'm just kind of going where they need me. So it's been a lot of fun being back in the classroom. Other than that, we are in full school mode, full taekwondo mode. Our schedule's kind of settled, very busy. There's something literally every night, but it's been really good for us. With that being said, with just how things have been kind of going, I think I'm going to go back to having an episode every 2 weeks. One, because I don't have a ton to show since I'm focusing very specifically on that sweater. So it's kind of hard to see progress when it doesn't look like much has been done. Also, just my knitting time has been kind of cut down. I've got some really encouraging comments from all of you, the viewers, just reminding me that this is a season and there's no prize for how much you knit. And that was what I really needed in that moment. So thank you for that. But just with how life is going, I think we're going to need to go to episodes every 2 weeks. For the time being, if that changes, I will let you guys know. But that is the episode for today. It's a little on the shorter side, but still, I always love hanging out with you guys, talking about knitting and life and movies and books and all the things. So thank you for spending a bit of time with me. I always enjoy spending a bit of time with all of you. Keep up knitting, and I will see you guys next time.